Good evening. Welcome to Kent County Levy Court meeting. This is Kent County Levy Court's business meeting. We're holding a meeting at Kent County Administrative Complex at 555 Bay Road, Dover, Delaware. It's Tuesday, April 12th, 2022. We're in Levy Court chambers. And before we officially open the meeting, I'll turn it over to the county administrator to explain how people can access us by phone and or WebEx.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. This meeting is being offered in person as well as via the internet using the WebEx platform. And guests who may be joining us via WebEx, and I know we have at least one participant in the meeting who will be addressing one of the items. Our consultant, Gina Beinfeld from the Tetra Tech Group, will be on WebEx a little bit later. But any other member of the public who is joining us via WebEx, a few items of instruction. If you're joining by a telephone, mobile phone, you can let us know you're ready to provide comment at appropriate locations throughout the agenda where public comment is offered by pressing *3 on your phone. That'll raise an electronic hand, and we'll be able to see you and recognize you and bring you in to the meeting room. And if you're on your computer, there's a raise hand icon on the WebEx screen that you can activate to do the same thing. It'll alert us that you're wishing to address a matter that's before Levy Court. And we will prompt members of the public when there's opportunity for public comment, and we'll restate these instructions at those times. This is a business meeting of Levy Court, and as such, we follow the Mason's Rules of Order along with the adopted Levy Court Business Rules of Procedure. Mr. President, back to you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the business meeting. Call the business meeting to order. I ask Commissioner Howell for the invocation, Commissioner Maston, Pledge of Allegiance, and Commissioner Sweeney. A moment of silence for our troops and first responders. All rise.
Heavenly Father, once again, we recognize your presence and ask your blessing in all of our proceedings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our military, law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, and other first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty, protecting and fighting for our freedoms. We also honor all first responders and medical staff who have succumbed to COVID-19 virus complications contracted through close interaction with infected patients losing their lives caring for others. As of today, more than 984,000 Americans nationwide, 2,884 here in Delaware, and 640 right here in Kent County have lost their lives to COVID. Please remember all these individuals who died in the line of duty, as well as keeping their families in your thoughts and prayers as they deal with the loss of their loved ones. In the military, Captain Matthew Tomkowitz from Summit City, Indiana, Captain Ross Reynolds from Leominster, Massachusetts, Gunnery Sergeant James Speedy from Cambridge, Ohio, Corporal Jacob Moore from Cattlesburg, Kentucky. In law enforcement in the last 3 weeks, Police Officer Dan Roca from the Everett Police Department in Washington, Investigator Donald Crooms from the Houston County District Attorney's Office in Georgia, Police Officer Dominic Francis from the Bluffton Police Department in Ohio, Lieutenant William Lebo from the Lebanon City Police Department in Pennsylvania, Deputy Sheriff Darren Almendarez from the Harris County Sheriff's Office in Texas, Police Officer Marshall Sutton from Henrico County Police Department in Virginia, Sergeant Christopher Vaughn, Cedar Bluff Police Department, Alabama, Deputy Constable Jennifer Chavez from the Harris County Constable's Office in Texas. Also, K-9 Major from the Franklin County Sheriff's Office and K-9 Jinx in the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, both killed by gunshot. Firefighters, Firefighter EMT Edward Long from the Portsmouth Fire Department, Ohio, Chief Engineer Jeff Williams from the Larksville Borough Fire Department in Pennsylvania, and Acting Chief Freddie Reeves from the Ward Volunteer Fire Department in Alabama. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sweeney. Can we have a roll call for the purpose of determining quorum, please?
Mr. President, Ms. Tanaka has stepped away, so I will take the roll. Commissioner Angel?
Present.
Commissioner Buxton?
Present.
Commissioner Hall?
Present.
Commissioner Howell?
Here.
Commissioner Maston? Commissioner Sweeney?
Here.
Commissioner Pepper?
Here.
Mr. President, we have a roll call of 7 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Need a motion for the adoption of tonight's agenda.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Sweeney to adopt tonight's agenda. Unless there's any questions, can we have a roll call on that, please?
Commissioner Angel?
Yes.
Commissioner Buxton?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Howell?
Yes.
Commissioner Maston? Commissioner Sweeney?
Yes.
Commissioner Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas. Motion passes.
Thank you. This evening's consent agenda, 22-05. Need a motion for that, please.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Maston. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call on that, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Angel?
Yes.
Commissioner Buxton?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Howell?
Yes.
Commissioner Maston? Commissioner Sweeney?
Yes.
And Commissioner Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas, approving consent agenda 22-05.
Thank you. This evening we have a presentation. It's Resolution 3932, declaring April 24th through May 1st, 2022 as Soil and Water Stewardship Week in Kent County, Delaware. Can we have that read into the record, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a resolution of Levy Court declaring April 24th through May 1st, 2022 as Soil and Water Stewardship Week in Kent County, Delaware. Whereas healthy, fertile soil and clean water is the lifeblood of nutrition and sustenance throughout the world, and soil conservation is a benefit to everyone, and whereas effective conservation practices ensure soil, water, animals, plants, and air can provide a rich standard of living, and whereas our survival and continued production and access to quality food and water depends upon the robust management of diverse natural resources nationwide, and whereas stewardship calls upon every individual to help conserve these precious resources to ensure their prosperity for future generations to come. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Kent County Levy Court hereby declare this week of April 24th through May 1st, 2022 as Soil and Water Stewardship Week in Kent County, Delaware. Mr. President?
Thank you. That is a resolution. I need a motion, please.
Move to approve Resolution 3932 and thank Mr. President for his long years on the Kent Conservation District Board.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Howell to approve Resolution 3932. And unless there's any questions, can we have roll call, please, on that?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Angel?
Yes.
Commissioner Buxton?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Howell?
Yes.
Commissioner Maston? Yes. Commissioner Sweeney?
Yep.
Commissioner Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas in favor of Resolution 3932.
Thank you. Resolution 3932 has passed, and we have Mr. Killen here in the audience. If he'd come forward, I'll come out and present it to you, and you can take it to the annual Soil and Water Stewardship Governor's Stewardship Week Awards. So I'll be right out.
I didn't know it was picture night, Kelly. Really, can you kind of...
Can you get it? Can you get the left side of his face only? Can we get a profile of him?
Well, you all the time limping around with something.
Hey, it's been this way for a few years.
I know.
He just does it for sympathy. You doing all right?
Yeah.
Eric, I'm telling everybody that I jumped into a car in front of me at the New Jersey Safari and saved a bunch of kids from 2 tires that got loose.
That's right, that's right.
I thought you were chasing the SPCA guy.
Where you want me to stand? You can stand right there. We're going to present this to you and let you say your speech. And
They said I didn't have to give one.
Gauntlet's been thrown.
yeah, we do this every year in recognition of Soil and Water Stewardship Week here in Kent County. And it's done in coordination with the Governor's Conservation Awards, which are coming up fairly soon, I believe. And this will be read there as well. And every year the conservation districts nominate somebody to receive the Governor's Conservation Awards, and along with a legislator that has done things to promote conservation throughout the year. So everybody's invited to come. All commissioners are invited to come. And afterwards, they always serve a catered lunch. So it's all free. You're all welcome to come. So commissioners want to make any comments about conservation? Stewardship Week? Bob, I'm sure you don't want to say anything.
Not really. I will say this, Terry and I went on the conservation board the same night. I was welcome. Just be quiet. I came in the door, the lady wouldn't let me go in the meeting room. She said, "Sir, you can't come in, you'll have to stay here." He comes in, she said, "Sir, you go right on in the back." I thought, man, wonder who he is. I didn't know who he was at the time. Oh, this has been what, 25 years ago? 28 years ago. 28, okay. So then the commissioner that asked me to come on to finish out another commissioner's term came in the door. He said, "How are you, Bob?" I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "I thought I was doing you a favor, but that lady said I can't go back there, so I guess I'm going back out that door." She looked at me, she says, "Oh my God, you're the new commissioner."
Hey, Bob has never lived that down.
Oh, we had a lot of fun. Well, let's get our picture. Kelly's gonna take our picture here. All right, it's all yours. Thank you, sir. I would like to say it's been a pleasure working with you guys. There was a bunch in here. It was a rough time for a while.
While back.
Thanks for your 28 years.
Thank you, you're welcome. Thank you, gentlemen. I was on there for a while. Thank you, man.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you, man. Nice job. I was, yeah. See you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
See you next week. Yep.
Now we have some introductions, I see.
Sure. Good afternoon, Commissioners, President Pepper. We do have one employee to introduce tonight, and that honor goes to Finance Director Susan Durham. Susan?
Good evening. Tonight I have with me Cheryl Bundick, is who we selected to be the new assessment supervisor. She started on March 7th. Most recently, she was employed as evaluation consultant with Tyler Technologies, working with the countywide reassessment project. Prior to that, she served as the city assessor for the city of Dover for a little while, for 31 years before retiring in 2021. Cheryl resides in Commissioner Angel's and Commissioner Pepper's district. Cheryl?
You didn't have to tell them how long I worked for the city. I feel really old.
Well, you started when you were a baby.
I did. I was like
So
5.
you have work papers.
I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to work for the county. I look forward to meeting with all of you, working with all of you. It's been great. Susan has been great teaching me the ropes since Sue had left before I could start in the assessment office. But everybody's been great with teaching me, and I look forward to helping with the reassessment when it is complete.
She's got a big job ahead of her.
do.
Yeah, she does. Commissioner Angel?
Well, Cheryl, all I can say is welcome to the family.
Thank you.
31 years with the city, and you're moving a mile closer to home now on this retirement and coming out of it, so you're getting closer.
I have no street lights to go through. It's great.
But thank you for joining the family, and good luck.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Sweeney?
Susan, can you actually say with a straight face that we're starting to reap employees from Tyler?
Yes.
Any other commissioners? Sure, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. It's always great when we hire people from Kent County
Yes.
to come and work here. And I'm sure you'll do a fantastic job. So you live in Little Creek, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, Little Creek.
Little Creek.
Have they had any problems there with the front of the firehouse lately?
Yeah, one of the guys pulled out of the firehouse and knocked the whole front down. You haven't seen it? No? Okay.
So
There was a little door that was still open that they couldn't see, and that now they're worried about the whole building, because they shouldn't have done that.
well, I've been meaning to call that guy that you let live with you and harass him about that.
Call and
a little
harass
bit.
him about
but
it,
I'm
yes.
afraid he'd ask me for money, so I haven't done it. So,
I'll let
So-
him know that's an option, though.
well, great to have you on board. And as
Thank you.
Alan said, welcome to the family.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there are no public hearings this evening. I don't see any old business. New business, action items from April 5th, 2022, committee meetings. First one, Commissioner Angel.
Thank you, Mr. Coelho.
It is evening, commissioners. It just seems so daylight outside. I don't know that we've had a day like today so far this year. So as you may recall from the meeting last week, the committee meeting, we did get our final numbers from Delaware Valley Health Trust, using Aetna as our health insurance provider. And they have imposed a very reasonable 1.98% rate increase, premium increase, and we have reflected that in the proposed cost share for employees, which were provided for you in your packets. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and staff does recommend approval. Back to you, Commissioner Angel.
Thank you, gentlemen and ma'am. Any questions? Okay. I move to authorize renewal with Delaware Valley Health Trust, Aetna, of the existing eligible employee retiree health insurance plan designs with integrated HRA, and approve the phantom and premium rates along with the employee retiree and dependent cost share at rates as presented for 2022-2023 plan year.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Masson. Do any of the commissioners have any questions on that motion? If not, can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel,
Yes.
Mr. Buxton,
Welcome the opportunity to discuss with any of you or anyone else that happens to hear this vote. My vote is no.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Commissioner Howell,
Yes.
Mr. Maston, Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Commissioner Pepper.
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 nay. The motion passes.
Thank you. Second item.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Alan. Second, Mrs. Maston.
Nine, procurement policy, cost thresholds for bids and requests for proposals. Mr. Pettibon, you have any comment?
Thank you, Commissioner Maston. We did revise the document and the motion to reflect the threshold below which we do not need to solicit for competitive pricing, and we set that at $500 as the commissioners had directed last week. All other aspects of this policy amendment remain as was presented last week. So I think it's in good shape and ready for your consideration in accordance with your direction last week.
I move to adopt policy amendment P22-01 as presented, which will have the effect of updating the Kent County procurement policy to match the current formal invitation to bid and request for proposal thresholds established by the state of Delaware, and which formally amends the purchasing threshold of $2,500 or less for non-public works purchases and $5,000 or less for public works purchases not requiring solicitation of competitive pricing to $500 or less for all purchases. And I further move that these new thresholds supersede any previous policy or directive and become effective upon adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Masson, second by Commissioner Sweeney. Do any of the commissioners have any questions on that motion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Angel?
Yes.
Commissioner Buxton?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Howell?
Yes.
Commissioner Maston?
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney?
Yes.
Commissioner Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas. Motion passes.
Thank you. Proposed policy amendment P2201 has passed. That's the end of the April 5th, 2022 committee meeting action items. The next item on the agenda, Mr. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Pettimaj.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President. You received in your packet this past weekend, a memo from Gina Bainfeld from the Tetra Tech organization, our consultant who's working with us on the American Rescue Plan Act plan. And last week we went through a prioritization exercise. Each commissioner had received a form, and we ranked various topics that were listed out by our consultant that were really a result of either communications we received from members of the public and or topics that were raised during our workshop in early March with the commissioners here in this room. And Gina's on the WebEx. You see her there. Hi, Gina. Good to see you this evening. She's going to share with you the results of the survey that you all took last week, and we'll have a discussion. I believe Gina's prepared a brief PowerPoint to walk us through the results and then some of our next steps. So, Mr. Commissioner Angel, if you don't mind, I would like to turn the floor over to Gina. Gina, if you would. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Mark, I am having a smidge of difficulty. Here we go. Can everyone see the screen? Not yet.
Here we go.
Now,
we got it.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. So thank you, everyone, for taking the time last week to participate in the prioritization exercise. We appreciate the timely returns and thoughtful input. Here up on the screen, as you received in your memo as well, is how the scoring worked out. Here in the blue are the top 5 score achievers, with senior services, emergency services, and homeless food banks as the top 3 really concentrating the points in these three subject areas. The number of votes here on the right column reflects the number of commissioners who had a score related to those to that particular item. The ranking was anyone who ranked number 1 received 5 points, 2, 4 points, etc. You can see there at the bottom right, and that's how we arrived at the scoring here. Fair amount of consensus, as I say, around these top 3. Was an interesting result. In the next couple of slides, what I'll do is just walk through these top 5 briefly. There are a couple of questions we wanted to drill into, and also have some suggestion in relation to some next steps and programmatic suggestions. And then we'll leave you with a final slide for further consideration. So here up on the slide is senior centers. Recall, this is around the senior centers, Hope Medical Dental Clinic, and affordable housing development for seniors. All of the slightly bluer items were specific requests received by the county through letter correspondence over the last month. And then here in emergency services, the additional item here was referenced in letter communication, but also perhaps reflects the volunteer fire and ambulance general support. In the last discussions, there was significant interest in providing volunteer fire and ambulance assistance, and essentially a commitment to do that, and interest to go forward on a program. And what we just wanted to follow up here in this slide on is any feedback you'd like to provide us on whether there is support in your prioritizations around further support to the volunteer fire and ambulance services, or if the scoring on this topic was really a reflection of interest to support the initiative that all seem to be already in concordance to go forward with. Any feedback on that? Is there something else here, or is it a reflection of the general support that we're going forward with?
Any questions? Any questions? Mr. Buxton?
Was the last statement made, was that, are we agreeing to go forward? Was that what you said at the last statement?
I think with the question is, with respect to emergency services, we've already committed, Levy Court's committed to providing grants to fire companies and the ambulance service. But this, when we did the prioritization, this still scored as a high priority. And was that just a reflection of the fact that we've already committed the 2.8 million or so to fire companies, or was there something in addition to that? I think that's the essential question.
And so my statement to that one is, speaking specifically to 2 then, or are we going 1 and 2? So let's stay with 2. I would suggest that there was a high prioritization because we acted early, and I think there continues to be one because of my understanding that we can utilize some of the 10 million in this year's budget to assist with our funding of the increase in paramedics or dispatching. So I would suggest that we prioritize that. I would also argue that in the ambulance side of things, we've pushed through a lot of money. At some point in time, what I'd like to know is, was it enough to make them whole? And if it wasn't, the hole that I see might be the EMS, with the ambulance side of things. So I am not sure what we covered. I'm not sure what's left, how effective it was. But by all means, on the ambulance side of things for fire departments, if we've left them hanging and we need to do more, I would be in support of it. So that was my yes, but it's not that simple, right? Okay. One, do we, well, let's do then.
Commissioner Hall?
Thanks, Commissioner Angel. So maybe this is a good time to just throw out a suggestion. In my mind, there's two ledgers because there's a $10 million bucket with restrictions, with limitations on what that can do in order to make the county whole or just particular county things. So even though, for example, employee premium pay, emergency operations, paramedics, dispatchers, all those are sort of internal operations that I think we ought to cost out and set that aside as markers against the 10 million. And there were a number of things that I think we all had some concerns or questions about in the survey that may go on that ledger. And then, the larger ledger is probably more dedicated to senior centers, homelessness, some of the other things on that list. So I just want to throw that out there now and see if that could be a way forward.
Yes, and that's kind of what I was addressing in my conversation, speaking specifically to two. That I don't know what are we good with this? Meaning, yeah, I'm good with it, but I described it. I don't know. Is what I described adequate for just me from my singular perspective, Mr. Pettit-Damage? Is that cool?
Yes, I think it captures your sentiment there. And what Gina wants to do right now is kind of go through each of the top five, basically, and then talk to you about. But this one kind of stood out because we knew we had already appropriated money. Whether or not there was something else that was beyond that. I mean, I think you answered the question. If there is something else, we want to try to meet that. But right now, we're not aware of anything beyond the initial requests from the fire companies that we have for anything beyond that. So, Gina, do you want to continue?
Yes, thanks. And to the point about the sort of double ledger with 10 million and the sort of larger pot, we are taking that into consideration in the prioritization. How the 10 million gets used really will be a function of what the prioritization ends up being, what the programs end up being. So we will fit them in the areas that they make sense to the funding. So if the county employees ended up being a priority in something that was pursued, then yes, that would be something that would be appropriate, for example, under the 10 million bucket. So the other three areas that were top priorities, top vote getters were the homelessness and food banks, with particular note towards the Dover Interfaith mission for housing, a new facility, and food bank Delaware Milford facility being specific requests provided in through letters and communication with the county. Fourth was water, stormwater, wastewater. Really probably a focus here on drainage and stormwater as a real potential, but folks did note this one as pretty significant. And then it was a little surprising to us that the county ventilation request ended receiving some level of priority here as well. If anyone has any feedback in relation to the county ventilation system, I would be happy to hear it. It, as I say, it did surprise us a little bit.
Gina? This is Al Angel. I know on mine, I didn't rate it. I put it down as a 10 million. Use the 10 million to fix the ventilation because I don't know what it's going to cost. So, and that 10 million was where I was asking to take it from. So I'd like to hear from the other commissioners. There was 5 other people that voted for it though, or 4 other people that voted for it. So I'm not sure what their thought was. I'm just telling you mine. Ms. Maston?
Gina, this is Joanne. From my perspective, back when COVID was a real hot topic here, I had spoken to Sam Vesquez, who I think handles the facilities here, and I asked him what he had thought about the HVAC system since he's been here, although a short time. And he felt at that time it did need to be looked at and evaluated as to whether or not it meets the needs today versus the needs of the building when it was built however many years ago. So he felt it was important that it be investigated, which is why it ranked high for me.
Gotcha.
Anybody else?
Gina,
Anyone else?
this is Terry Pepper. Pretty much a ditto with Commissioner Maston.
Okay, good.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Mr. Buxton?
I want to assure you that I took the time to fill out this entire survey. In fact, I was the one referenced that took my own path. That one stands out to me as a $10 million project. It stands out to me the one that fits COVID. If we're going to use this money for something, that's one that stands out. If ventilation was determined to be some sort of an issue with COVID or other, that one made sense to me. And I'm trying to spend as much money as I can on things that'll make a lasting impact. That's all.
Anybody else?
All righty. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for those that thoughtful input. Before I leave this slide, just one important note to keep in mind. When we're talking about new facilities, in general, the consideration does need to be around where a project is in their development process and consideration of procurement processes that may have been undertaken to date. So as we prioritize, as we assign funds to priorities, and then begin to work with projects and applications, we'll be looking towards those considerations, kind of important in relation to adhering to the federal rules around this program. So let me move on to the next slide. In looking towards the senior centers, it was the most significant, most highly rated priority among all the commissioners. So more than fair amount of consensus around this subject area. What we thought to do is to put a little bit of structure around a potential program and wanted to get any feedback that you had on this approach. Looking towards the various components under the bullets and the overall project area, as well as the letter correspondence, a grant program could be created around 3 eligible uses of funds. Provision of services, these would be support services for seniors within centers, outside potentially of centers. Revenue loss, as is so widely the case, increased expenses and reduced revenues have impacted a wide variety of organizations, and senior centers may also suffer this. And then a third eligible use could be capital projects, whether these are improvements to facilities on the exterior or sort of the building structure or internal improvements. that are significant. So we thought this was a good approach. It would take into consideration a wide variety of needs that have been expressed, and thought we'd put it out there and see your thoughts. We would set up a grant program around such an initiative, take in applications, create eligibility criteria, of course, an application process, a review process, and the structure around that. But just as a concept, thoughts or feedback, input?
Any feedback, gentlemen? Commissioner Sweeney?
Hi, Gina. It's Jody Sweeney. So are those three eligible uses, do they come from your having meetings with the senior centers already?
No, this is really as a result of the prioritization and the expressed interest. But the senior services, that provision of services is pretty wide and can take in a wide variety of uses. If it is a recommendation that we meet with senior service providers and senior centers, we certainly can do that. We can convene a stakeholder meeting to either gather a little more input or float a program structure with them. So,
right, I hadn't heard of anything other than revenue loss from the senior centers. I hadn't heard of any capital projects that they were interested in.
Commissioner Patterson?
If I could just supplement that, part of this list was developed by correspondence we've received over the course of time. So, for example, you recall early on we had representatives from Harrington Senior Center come in right after ARPA, and they told us about a major capital project there. We did receive a letter from like the Hope Clinic, and that was clearly related to revenue loss and the opportunities of not having their fundraisers and things like that. And so they're asking for some assistance. And then we more recently received a request from the Dover Housing Authority, and they're about ready to embark on a major rehabilitation of Owens Manor and Queens Manor, which is a senior housing project in downtown Dover, and they've asked for a specific amount. And then I think when we were having our brainstorming during our meeting, Meals on Wheels was mentioned as a potential for an organization that does great things and is suffering with challenges, costs going up, and that sort of thing. And we have not heard from any of the other senior centers per se in terms of correspondence, except for Harrington, but we haven't solicited it either. We haven't gone out to them. If we create a program like Gina's suggesting here, we would market this, so to speak, to the senior communities, senior service providers, and let them know about it. And if they have revenue loss, or if they have programs that they're struggling to continue with, or if they have a capital project, they would be able to, submit.
I had forgotten about Karen coming and talking to us. That was really early on. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Buxton? For me, looking at this, of course, the seniors centers is one of the biggest things I've been pushing for because of loss of income. But for Hope Clinic, Medical and Dental, I served on that board for about 10 years. It's provision of services. Right now, there's over a 2-year backlog on just getting services to people that need it. And when I say need it, for those who don't know, if you have a tooth decay, and it gets into the gum and it gets into your bloodstream, it goes straight to your heart valve. You're going to need a heart replacement valve. So, it's very crucial that dental work be part of the medical. So I definitely want to bring that up to you all because that is a critical need for people to have bad teeth and they need to get them fixed. Just wanted to put it out there. Anybody else? Commissioner?
It's not, this is number one. That's what's a challenge to me. Not that this isn't important. This can't be number one. When we've got major projects that we could be doing in sewer, in water, and dealing with the turf, or maybe a major project that's going to create a few distribution center. And I don't even know, what's the number that we're looking at here? What would I guess, let me ask you this in fairness. Does it matter that we know the number that we're working with, the total number, cash-wise, in making this decision for this right now? Would that matter? I'm not trying to be a nerd, not a nerd, but say a bad question. That would it matter right now? How much money do we have in program number one to use? Because if we start looking at capital projects and everything else, we could draw down pretty quick and then leave something off the table that was not intended, right?
Yeah, I would suggest that if this does resonate, if we want to create a program like this, then we, similar to what we did with the chamber, we set a budget and we say we're willing right now to put aside X number of dollars into this program, and then we'll see how it performs. And if there's something that comes along and we think it's a compelling project, we bring it back, we need more money in that. We don't know until we get into it. We might be like the chamber project, we put $3 million into small business, $2 million into hospitality. It appears that we're not going to spend it all, even though we're still processing requests. But I think it's safe to say that we will have money left over. We just didn't know until we got into it, but we took the lead of the chamber and they said, this is the amount we think would be a healthy amount. And it turned out it has been. And same thing here. If whatever you felt comfortable with, $3 million, $5 million into this program, whatever it is, $2 million, we would start with that.
And I'm not going to be an obstructionist. This is not I don't own it. I need to play along. I get it. I do want to voice some concerns as I have. I think I would be better served, because one of the concerns I had talking with Commissioner Angel this weekend about the program was, what about the ones that don't make the list that have exceptional value? Some of them are big ticket values. And what I would recommend is that rather than get into the weeds, which is vitally important, right? This is getting into the weeds. It's vitally important. Before we do that, I would like to have seen us take out the big tickets, pull them aside. Then you know how much money you have left to create these buckets of which to spend in each one. But when you start putting $5 million in the senior service centers program and you get to 4 and you're up to like X millions of dollars, and now you've got these big ticket items and no funding. That's my concern. I don't even know if I articulated it well, but I do know this. We've got some wood to chop, so I'm going to stop getting in the way. I'm ready to move on.
Mr. Hall?
Thanks. So I kind of sympathize with what Commissioner Buxton's saying, but so we did an anonymous prioritization. It came up with some results. Now, if this is item one, I don't think we'll have an idea what the footprint is until we have a workshop and they come in and we sort of outline the framework of the program, and then they respond to us. They may come back and say, we can do it all for $5,000, which they won't. But so it may come in much lower than we ever expect, or it could be big. And we will do that with all 5 of them. But sort of like with the Chamber of Commerce, we may find that we set a target and we're going to get 2 installments of money. So right now we're just burning through the first one. And then there's a whole nother 17 million, 17.5 that's coming as well. So I'd like to keep a hold of the entire list because, the senior services and centers may come back and say, yeah, we only burned up 75% of what what we asked. And so we'll get residue, we'll get residual amounts left over from throwing spaghetti against the wall, see what sticks, see what doesn't. We'll get another installment. So I believe in the end, we could probably address every single thing on here. And I think the exercise here is just that collectively, this is what we prioritized. And, you know, I think we just have to kind of go through it. But I do want to come back down to Public Works where, you know, we have some of our own internal Public Works projects that I hope will show up on some list. Anyway, I'm done. Thanks.
Commissioner Howell?
Commissioner Buxton, you did articulate your point well. I'll give you that. Okay, I think it's a good strategy, makes sense. I'm not sure if that's exactly the direction we're going to go, but I guess my most immediate question is, what exactly do we hope to accomplish tonight? I mean, kicking these ideas around is definitely needed. It's kind of a committee meeting type thing, you know, where we sit there and we chew the fat and do this, that, and the other. So what do we want to do tonight? What decision or whatever?
Sure. Excuse me, Mr. Pettimarsh.
Thank you, Commissioner Angel. Thank you. Our goal tonight, number one, report the results and then have a discussion about, and we're verifying what we collected last week, the data we got from y'all. And then if we could leave here tonight with some sense that at least 4 of you were interested in standing up a grant program around senior services or some of the others that we're going to get into, that's really what we were hoping to get. I mean, then we have something to work with. We will develop a concept, bring it back, lay it out before you, kind of like what we did with the chamber. I mean, the chamber was a model for some of these other things. They came to you, they asked for, they didn't have any specifics. They said, we just know we have businesses that are hurting. And we recommend that you give us $3 million and we're going to design a program around that. But they didn't have it designed coming in. You said yes. They went back to work. We designed it. We brought it back. You blessed it in November, and then we ran off with it, and now it's working. That's kind of what we're hoping to get tonight, is just some indication that yes to this, no to that. Let's pursue this. Let's not pursue that. Gina, do you have anything to add on that question?
No, that's really an excellent summary. We're not looking for decisions. We're not looking to put dollar amounts to initiatives tonight. We're looking for some feedback and, of course, to report out the results. We will be back to you with more detailed proposal. To that point, I'll take the liberty and address a second program that really, it falls well within the same structure of a program for senior services with those 3 additional eligible uses as possibilities. So why to switch the slide here is that we're kind of developing an idea around a template for some programmatic responses. Again, the provision of services, revenue loss, capital projects being, the 3 eligible use categories. And if these make some sense, I'm going to flip back to the top priorities. We really are addressing our top, our first and our third. We can look at this emergency services again. Stormwater, wastewater, I think probably needs some formation around what kinds of projects, but I think there are some dollars to be associated here, probably with a priority towards drainage. And then county ventilation has already got some legs and has a little bit of funding assigned to it, perhaps some additional. And then we would come back with more form around the remaining six items here. Six items. And hopefully go forward with some decision towards the next meeting. We can bucket dollar amounts. We can also create a program, and through that program solicit the dollar amounts and then commit that way as well. You know, both have some pros and cons. But that's the notion with these two programmatic initiatives is, do they make some sense? You know, do we have a little bit of support around them? Okay, good. Then we'll go back and we'll put our thinking caps on for the rest.
Any questions for Gina? Question for Mr. Petermosh. Next month, we should be getting in those 17.5 million, correct?
It'll be May, yes. That's the target.
We have about 2.5 left, so it should give us about 20 million right now, coming once it comes in. We've already got 10 million set aside. We already did 5 million, 3 and 2 for tourism and business. So that's 15. So it should leave us 2.5 yet.
At least, yes. Yeah.
So we'll have actually a better understanding too, once we get the data, what we need to do is set money up for what this is going to be for the top 5 or 4, since we already got money already set aside for emergency services out of that. So,
and you remember some of these potential uses you could earmark or use some of the $10 million revenue loss money towards some of these projects as well. So we have not really spent any of that yet.
Well, the other thing is too, we still may have money left over from the tourism and from business that could go back into the coffer. And then, is there going to be a deadline set for this? So once we pull the money back, will somebody else be able to come forward? They decide to automatically just apply for it now because they didn't before?
Yeah, of course. The ultimate deadline is set by the Act itself, which is the December 31st of 2024 committed, December 31st of 2026 spent. But like with using the example, the chamber program again, the small business grant program, when we set that, we stood it up on the 4th of January with the deadline for submission of March 31st. So that was something that we just totally came up with ourselves. And if you come up with a grant program for any of these topic areas, we would do the same thing with your concurrence. If we open it up a window for a couple of months, whatever we think is a reasonable time period for people to get their applications in and be considered, and then it can close. Yeah.
But we need to get a dollar amount though at some point coming up. That's what that's where we're going to stick with these top 5 or 4 right now. That's the discussion.
Yeah, the top 5 are just the ones that you all prioritized as the top 5. Doesn't mean the other topics are off the table totally, right? There's some that scored lower, but they may still be very valid areas that you want to consider later on. Yeah,
that's why I was
take
trying
care
to
of
get
the more hurt first, the things that are hurting most first. That's what I get out of the prioritization, and then you work down the list. I think Gina has a few more things that she wanted to cover on the priority. I think you skipped ahead there a little bit.
Go ahead, Gina.
This was the second slide. We were talking about seniors, and then here duplicating the program structure around homeless and food banks, provision of services, revenue loss, capital projects, same eligible uses as the seniors. So asking for any feedback or kind of general concurrence around a program structure with those uses, we would be grateful for that feedback. Let me just pause there and let's take in the homeless, and then I've just got the one additional slide. So any feedback on replicating the senior program structure here for homelessness and food banks, taking into consideration the interfaith mission for housing, new facility request, and food bank of Milford facility request as letter communication to the county.
Any thoughts, gentlemen, ladies?
Okay, so this was the third highest priority. We're asking for some color commentary here. What would you, is it still the third priority? Is it something you want to try to build a program around? Don't get hung up on names on the screen. It's a topic, not specific projects. So again, if we think that this category is worthy of some type of program, that's what we really want to know now, not any specific project underneath of that heading. Or do you want to separate them? I mean, you want to separate homelessness from hunger, and I think looking at it from a higher altitude, it looked like these two kind of share the same space. The homelessness and hunger kind of are some of the same people are providing services to homeless and to people who are, food insecure.
Mr. Sweeney?
Thank you, sir. So this one, as opposed to the senior program, this one, and I know you said take those names out of it, but it still had two very large asks, which then would lend itself to Mr. Buxton's suggestion that we pull those out and handle those separately. So is that one of the options? One of the options is set up a program. One of the options is to pull them out and handle them separately. Or a third option.
Yeah, I believe if that's the prerogative of Levy Court, really, if you see a project here that you say this is one we want to do, regardless of any program we want to do, I think you can pull that out and say we want to do that, as long as it qualifies under ARPA and all that. We get the information we need. I think it can happen that way.
So when Gina mentioned this before, Gina, did you imply that maybe the Food Bank of Delaware did not comply?
No, I wasn't necessarily going down to that level. All I was saying was projects are not coming to the Levy Court brand new. They're in various stages of development or design. Whatever condition they come, whatever the funding need is, does have to comply with the federal procurement rules. So if a project has been fully procured and is under construction, and there's a consideration to provide funds for the construction, we'd have to look towards the procurement used, the processes used to hire the construction firm. That's kind of really where I was saying. And as well, it needs to relate to the pandemic. There's some criteria around each of the projects related to the funding source that we would look to sort through. I wasn't saying necessarily that a particular one was not eligible at this point.
I just remember the funding from the Obama administration that had to be a shovel-ready project. That's not the case with ARPA funding, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hall?
I'm thinking homelessness and food banks, so that's two very broad categories with two very specific capital projects listed under it. But it doesn't preclude provision of services, revenue law, other agencies, other entities that want to come forward. So if we stood up a program and then just validated with Dover Interfaith and Food Bank of Delaware, would you like to be considered under these programs? And, they would have to understand that there's criteria that if they didn't meet, then we couldn't give them any money. But I'm just looking to minimize the number of programs that we have, keep the umbrella large. People can come in, make their case. We put them on the list. We throw some money at each of these, large buckets and then do what we can in each of the cases. Because if we start parsing this out into 20 small buckets, I think it'll get out of control fairly quickly. So anyway, that's what I want to say.
There is a balance between creating something broad enough to be inclusive and too broad to be unmanageable. So you want a few buckets, but you don't want 10. That's a lot of buckets. Just to pick numbers, you're absolutely right.
If I may, Commissioner Angel, I think just knowing what we know so far, there are two big capital projects here. I would think you're going to see that, and then people who aren't necessarily on the list yet will come in with services. They're service providers, people that are in the business of taking care of the homeless or people that are hungry, that would apply for smaller amounts just to supplement or to help them provide the services that they do. And maybe some revenue loss as well for organizations that raise money to turn around and give it away. But that's probably a lesser aspect of this one, I would think.
Well, for example, the food bank, when they came before us, they need about 35 million. Well, they're not going to get 35 million, but they can get something. So even if you pull them out for the bigger picture, which I don't know why we'd want to do that, because they're not going to get that much money really per se. They're going to get money. So I just see that when I did this, and I said, I know we weren't supposed to do bullet points, but I did put bullet points on my numbers I picked, so they would show up on this. This could have helped, I think, our discussion tonight if we had picked bullet points along with our numbers, just saying, because that's what we're doing right now. So anyway, I just wanted to say that, when they're not going to get 35 million, so they're going to get something.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And really, it would be up to, ultimately, Levy Court to set the parameters. On capital project, the parameter may be different than provisions for services in terms of the maximum allowable, how you would fund it. It may be a percentage of the total cost. It may be capped at a certain amount. You could set the standards for that in the program. I don't think the food bank came in here thinking we were going to fund that much money, but they're leveraging, they're trying to pool money from a variety of different sources to make their budget for their project. And if this qualifies, I think, probably be a good project to get behind. But we could set the limits.
Mr. Angel?
Mr. Buxton?
Idea about highlighting the bullets. In fact, that's what I did. Secondary to that, I think Mr. Pettit stated very clearly what I think would make sense. Not tonight, obviously, but maybe moving forward. I think the capital projects could be a separate category altogether because it is unique. And if we don't control the capital projects, that's where the imbalance will occur, and that's where most of the money will go. So I think that we need to be we need to understand that. I think that provisions for services in the categories that we've highlighted and revenue loss make sense and can be kept in each one of these. But I think the capital projects, anyone seeking those, should be itemized somewhere else or looked or categorized somewhere else. And then treated just like that, because they have to meet the standard of purpose, right? It can't just be a standard of, I really like them. It needs to be a standard of purpose. I think the food bank can meet that, it appears, because of the evidence of what they did and what they do. So, anyway, there you go.
Okay. Anybody else?
To add a little color for your consideration around capital projects, I've talked a little bit about this kind of proportionality of the project response to the pandemic-related injury, economic injury problem that was caused by the pandemic. That there's a relationship between the severity and the breadth of the problem and the money being put towards the solution. And capital projects are ones where you get a considerable increase in the amount of funds put towards finding a solution. Capital projects are ones that are a little delicate, except for the infrastructure, for the water infrastructure, which has none of this, what I'm talking about. There is this proportionality that has to be considered. So putting a lot of funds towards a particular facility, or largely funding a particular facility, may be a little harder to get through the criteria. So percentages of facility support, parts supporting a larger project with a contribution towards the capital or design or something of that nature. Those are going to be, generally speaking, easier. So we don't necessarily have to think about whole big chunks when we're talking about capital projects. We can think about whole big projects, but contributions of smaller percentages of that whole big project might be a good way to begin to think about capital projects. Except for water infrastructure. That you can do more significant funding towards.
Gina, did you say this has to go around the COVID though? They have to be COVID related for even for a capital project?
Correct.
Because I can tell you the Dover Interfaith Mission, they lost their lease on their place where they house people, and they were looking for a place. It had nothing to do with COVID per se. It was because they were forced to move, how to move their and find a place. So would they be even eligible then?
May still be.
I'm sorry?
Apologies. There may still be a connection to COVID.
Okay, I just want to be sure. Okay, I just want to, because if you said COVID related, that's not really truly COVID related. So I'm glad to hear it. We can still move forth though.
Yeah, when we would set up the criteria for capital projects or for a program, we would outline what that relationship should be, what that should look like, and provide some guidance. So hopefully when we received a formal request, that would be taken into consideration, it would be justified, it would be explained in the terms around the program. If it truly is not a fit, then, okay, but I would think you'd be able to, and Interfaith would be able to fashion a discussion around COVID and the facility.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else, Gina?
The only other thing is just this last slide. It's a little busy, sorry folks, but it just lays out the other non-5, the 6 through 11 priorities that we would look to consider in our next volley to you. The gray denoted, where's my cursor? The gray denoted items are specific items that have come to the county through correspondence. So that is all I have. Thank you for the input.
Okay, Mr. Pettermaj.
Well, Mr. Chairman, what we would like to know is if I think we put a couple of specific ideas before Levy Court regarding a couple of the top priorities. One dealt with the senior services and whether or not we would want to frame up a grant program. It's on the screen around this topic. We would work it up, bring it back, go over all the details, make the tweaks. We would make our first proposal at, what we think the parameters would be, and, but ultimately we would refine it here if you want us to do that. And then the second was regarding the homeless and hunger program, whether or not we want to do similar design around a program like that. We can take them one at a time. We can do them simultaneously, bring them back at a future committee meeting for review, discussion. Is there a consensus to do that?
Well, I was going to say, I'm just going to say simultaneously, this gets this thing ball rolling and get moving.
Well, I would agree with that.
We got the 5. We've already gone through the system, so that's the marching orders I see that we need to do, follow. That's what I wanted to say. So, anybody else okay with that? Raise your hands.
Okay. I
Got
think
6 out of 7.
I think we got some
Got
firm direction.
6.5. Can I jump in and say something real quick?
Go ahead, Mr. Paxton.
And this is relevant, right? Important, and I hope that it makes sense. I explained what I would prefer to do, and that really doesn't matter because I don't have to be right. Maybe I'm not, but I think where I am right is on this one. We moved ahead with some individual things, such as the fire company. We should have small businesses. What's left hanging right now is one of the economic engines that we invested heavily in, that has clear and precise data on what their revenue losses were related to COVID. And I don't think they should be stuck in an unfunded category. In fact, I think we ought to pull the turf out and deal with them right now. And I don't mean right now tonight, but I mean separate from what's going on here. That would be my suggestion, to look into that leadership and maybe make that decision.
Mr. Hall, can you use your mic, please?
Since that kind of spans tourism and business, have they approached them to leverage those grants?
No, I don't believe they have. They may have talked to them, but one of the things with the chamber program, it was for-profit businesses, and the Kent County Regional Tourism Corporation is a nonprofit, so I would disqualify them. But they were also looking at a major revenue loss, and it really far exceeded the parameters of that program, even if they did qualify. And they did a specific letter that they submitted, and that's why they're listed there in gray, as Gina said, DTURF. Now, they didn't submit any of the background materials on their losses yet because we haven't advanced it, but they did indicate a fairly substantial lost revenue. They had a book of business for 2020 that basically got eliminated. And so that's what they're looking to help recover from.
Does that suit you, Mr. Buxton?
It should suit me. I think it should suit the commissioners, right? If we feel like
Well, I think we have the top 5 right now, and we're going to have to go back. We're not going to spend all the money. So this is a priority list to get moving on something that we've already prioritized. And then once we start spending the money and we have leftover money, then we can go back and look at what's left over, as Mr. Pettermage says. So we can prioritize that then. So, yes.
I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I agree with Mr. Buxton. We need to pull turf in pretty quickly. We have invested a lot in that economic engine for Kent County, and it's given back a lot. And I think we need to move forward on that. And we can do that at the same time we're putting these programs together, the grant programs. It's simple.
And this,
I agree with both of you, except we already prioritized, and it's number 9. Well, yeah, somebody made some mistakes. I actually picked it, so I mean, I do understand. And as economic chairman, I do look at businesses and tourism, and tourism is our biggest moneymaker for this county, but it came in 9th. So, I mean, we can sit here and badger it all day long.
well, all I want particularly, we're almost done, right? So we're not fighting, but this is play money, imaginary money designed around COVID. And anytime we can spend it specifically on things where there is a direct economic loss that can be demonstrated, I think we jump at those. We don't wait on those, right? And if they can present that, and it appears they have, then I think we jump at it. It appears that we're not all in agreement, so let's move on.
Commissioner Hall.
I'll be quick. I understand the economic impact of DE turf, but I can't say that it may be in terms of scale, but if we set them aside and say this organization is so important, then we have to look at the scouts in the eye and say, well, sorry, you didn't make the cut. The Ag Museum supports tourism. The Murphy School is a good cause. So there's a lot of nonprofits up here that probably could all quantify how much they lost as it related to COVID, and they have a need, and it supports tourism to one degree or another, or it supports quality of life in the county. So that's why I think I scored it not on mine. So that's where I'm at.
Anybody else?
It is not apples to apples with that statement. Let's move on.
All right. So we're going to move on for the top 5 simultaneously to get it taken care of. That's what I saw, and everybody put their hands up. 6.5 is what I heard. So, okay.
Gina, did you have any final comments or thoughts?
No, I cede the remainder of my time to the court. I thank you very much for your feedback and conversation. Thoughtful input. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
Okay. Is there anything I need to do, Mr. Pettermage? We already got our say out there and the numbers, so.
Yeah, I think we got the input that we needed to move forward, so thank you.
So we're finished with that report and move on to the next one, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda falls under Mrs. Maston, FY 2023 Annual Operating Budget Introductions. So that would mean you'd read each one of those.
FY 2023 Annual Operating Budget Introductions of the following resolutions and ordinances pertaining to the fiscal year 2023 budget, all for public hearing on April 26, 2022 at 7 p.m. Number 1, Resolution 3920, FY23 Property Tax Rate. Number 2, Resolution 3921, FY23 Old Mill Acres Suburban Park District Tax Rate. Number 3, Resolution 3922, FY23 Royal Grant Suburban Park District Tax Rate. Number 4, Resolution 3923, FY23 Eagles Nest Suburban Park District Tax Rate. Number 5, Resolution 3924, Kent County Disposal District 1 user rates. Number 6, Resolution 3925, FY23, Kent County Library District tax rate for unincorporated areas. Number 7, Resolution 3926, FY23 Milford Library District tax rate. Number 8, Ordinance LC 22-06, an ordinance adopting the annual operating budget for the Library Tax District of Kent County, Delaware for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022. Number 9, Ordinance LC 22-07, an ordinance adopting the annual operating budget for Kent County, Delaware for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. Number 10, Resolution 3927, command to the Director of Finance to collect sewer delinquent accounts by district as of March 31st, 2022. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Buxton, you have an introduction?
Introduction of Ordinance LC 22-10. It's an ordinance to amend the comprehensive plan map designation in the official zoning map of Kent County, Delaware, pursuant to the provisions of Kent County Code, Volume 2, Chapter 205, Zoning, Articles 3, Section 205-8, Section 205-9, and Articles 28, changes and amendments effective December 1st, 2000. That has amended for a public hearing on May 24th, 2022 at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Do we have a need for executive session this evening?
No.
We need item number 2, I believe.
Move to go in executive session immediately following the committee meetings of April 19th, 2022 for preliminary discussion on site acquisition for publicly funded capital improvement, legal strategy sessions regarding collective bargaining or pending or potential litigation, and personal matters pursuant to 29 Del Code 10004, B2, 4, and 9.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel to have executive session on April 19th, 2022. Second by Commissioner Sweeney. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none. We have roll call on that, please.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes. 7 yeas. Motion passed. Next item, information items. Anybody have any informational items?
Mr. President?
Pettermosh.
Just to remind commissioners that next Wednesday, we have Youth and Government Day here in the Levy Court chambers, and we'll begin at 8 o'clock. We have a nice crew of Boy State and Girl State students that are going to be here. I think about 26, correct, Kelly? Kelly's been working with the American Legion on this project, and thank you very much, Kelly, for all your good work on that. And so, commissioners, you're all welcome. I've heard from a few of you that plan to be here, and we certainly, your participation is really important to that program. The second thing is, you probably may have seen in your email that Senator Carper will be coming to Brecknock Park, not this coming Friday, but next Friday, the 22nd, to tour the Goggin Manor House. You know, the Goggin Manor House is a recipient of a substantial federal grant for rehabilitation. And so I think we got contacted this week that the senator wants to come in and actually take a look at the building and meet with anyone who would like to be there. We don't have the exact time yet, I don't believe. Laura, have you heard a time or?
No, sir.
Yeah. So as soon as we get the exact time, we'll get that out to commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other informational items? Any public comments?
No public comment online.
Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thursday night, President Pepper and I had the opportunity to visit the First State Model Railroaders Club at the Will Run Community Center. If you remember, we looked at that building and determined that it was way too much for Kent County to take on as a government building and a government facility. And the First State Model Railroad Club can make it into a public building without all of the requirements that a government would have. So I want to thank the Levy Court Commissioners for not moving on that building, because the First State Model Railroaders are very, very appreciative of our efforts to connect them with Mr. Alexander and the excommunicated Ruritan Club from Willow Run to get that building. And I think it's because it was in Commissioner House District that the building decided to attack me. I will not be going back to that building.
They've already started raising money, and they've already put a substantial amount of money into the building. Namely, they put a new roof on it, and they've done some changes to the inside, and they have their model train set up out there, and it's kind of really neat to see. Commissioner Sweeney, I don't know how much sweat he put into it, but he certainly did put blood into it the other night. And if I'd known that he needed help to his car, I would have hung back a little bit longer and helped you.
If you had backed up, you would have run over me.
But in all seriousness, I think they found a home out there. This is the third place they've been. The first two places they were kicked out of after putting substantial amounts of money into the properties. And they really do a lot in the community. And then they also work with the Boy Scouts as well. I guess there's a train badge that they can get. And so it like I said, they're really enthused. And they've got an active group of people out there. And I think every Thursday night they have a meeting out there. So, and you're all welcome to attend. Mr. Angel.
Ms. Pettermosh, we have a DAC meeting next Thursday. Is it going to be live at Fraser's?
I'm not sure.
I mean, it's on my calendar, but I haven't gotten anything.
I haven't seen a notice from the secretary yet.
Well, I know she was trying to retire. I don't know if they found somebody. So,
yeah.
Is there a way we can find out?
But we'll have to track it down. Yeah, good
Okay.
point. We haven't heard anything from anyone yet on it, so
right.
we'll see what we can find out. Thank you.
Mr.
Commissioner Buxton.
Just a request, and I'm the Grinch at Christmas again. I need to understand, can we have or have we had on committee a discussion about the $1 million that we're getting ready to spend on the Goggin House? I know it's in the budget, but I'm not quite sure we understand what we're getting into. So I would like to have that discussion to better understand it. That's all. In a nice way, I assume, right?
I think that'd be a great idea as soon as they come up with a plan. We weren't even sure we were getting the money until the federal government passed the infrastructure budget, which was done, and we were just notified less than 2 weeks ago that the money was coming. So Mr. Shepard is working on it. But in my conversations with him, we are following the Davis, Bowen, and Friedel plan, unless we decide to maybe have another plan to come in and look at it, because we've addressed some of those issues already. So, but yeah, absolutely bring it to committee and talk about it.
Concern is the committee before the budget, which includes the $500,000 in the acceptance of funds, because one of the problems you obviously have when you enter into an agreement with the $500,000 on one side and you have the other, is that then they're done and then you're left. And I need to understand what we're doing there, because $1 million, it's a big time number that you're going to, I think, have to explain to folks at a time when we've got a lot of issues going on in this county. I didn't argue it's not a wonderful project, and I commend Commissioner Sweeney for looking into this, but I do think we need to make sure we know what we're doing. I really mean that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Okay. Any motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Sweeney. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nope. We are adjourned.